Hello, welcome to Brew. I'm Lisa.
Hi, I'm Sushma.
And I'm Kate.
Today, Sushma's joining us to talk all about customer-centric change. So Sushma and I worked together many moons ago, and she's got a vast of experience in customer change. And I think nowadays, well, actually in change management generally, Sushma, haven't you?
Yeah.
But I think you particularly want to talk about sort of the customer-centric part of that and how now we tend to focus on I suppose different perspectives in the change process. How would you, just for the viewers, how would you define customer-centric change?
I mean, customer-centric has been there for quite some time, actually. So what does customer-centric means is you're putting your customer at the heart of whatever you do. Right from beginning of, you start engaging from customer till you provide the service to the customer. So where everything revolves around customer. So end of the day, if you don't have customer, you don't have business. So it's quite crucial to put customers in the center. So just to see how each and every service, what you provide to the customer, whether it's adding value to them, having that kind of open conversation with customer makes it better. So especially after pandemic, most of the organization don't want to lose their customers, and most of the customers are now looking for different change, maybe to look into any competitive things out there. So it's good idea to retain your customer so that you're not spending money in going and finding a new customer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of benefits, isn't there? Especially say, if you retain customers rather than putting money into finding new ones. It makes a lot of sense.
For example, I think when you see bigger companies like Apple, Google, or Amazon, they are so good in managing their customer. The way they kind of operate, it's so much customer-centric. I think that's kind of opening eyes to the rest of the other organizations as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think as business analysts as well, I think nowadays we're more used to actually looking at things from a customer perspective. Things like customer journey mapping, for example, looking at the positive and negative experiences, the satisfiers or the delighters, which I think people prefer, don't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely changed, hasn't it?
It is, yeah.
Kate's joined us today, actually because we're just launching now a lovely piece of apprenticeship management software called Bud. So Kate's been rolling out the whole process along with Nicole and various other people in Assist. So I thought it'd be a really good idea to bring Kate into this discussion because she's literally going through that sort of change transformation at the moment. So how do you think it's going, Kate?
Well, I think it's really interesting what you're saying about putting the customer at the heart of everything you're doing, because I think one of the balances that we've had to really consider as part of the project, and particularly the rollout, is that we have multiple customers with very different needs. So it's actually about really understanding all of those perspectives and then identifying, well, what are the key things for each of those different customers, and how do we balance that? And how do we balance that then also with some of our compliance and governance regulations, that we have to apply to? So how can we really still say that we are putting the customer at the heart of everything that we're doing and really delighting them when actually they've got such a broad range of needs?
Yes, definitely, Kate. I think that's a very good point. I think most of the organization have multiple customers, and how do you kind of emphasize on whom you're going to focus? Rather than that, you kind of map all your customers and say, who are your key customers, and also understand the journey they've been. For example, if you have a long-lasting customer compared to the new customer, so again, to see whatever you're offering, how it's going to impact them. So maybe if your service is impacting everybody in one stage, that's good, but some customer may benefit better than the other customer. But having that open conversation about why you're doing or what kind of things coming in terms of your services, and trying to explain them, and also understanding their needs. I think that's very important. What worked for them, what didn't work. So things didn't work, but being honest and open and saying that, we're planning to get there. So maybe have that in your roadmap so that you can include that for the next customer benefit as well. And sometimes I think, we have to take some of the decision because of the organization challenges or the climatic condition where with pandemic things change. So having that open conversation and saying, for example, I think when we were working in one of the organization, we bought a new system, though the older system was much better than the new one. So people started pushing, why is this? So we had to kind of explain to them, we understand where we're going, but because we have to do some cost cutting, otherwise we couldn't be sustainable. So explaining that and then saying that, whatever your new functionality you want, maybe we can include them in the future releases so that we're not forgotten about them. So having that clear conversation, and especially customer-centric, it's not just the customer executive sitting there. So I think most of the organization get it wrong is because they provide a service or they provide a product to their end customer, and then they forget it. They think it's the frontline people working the service desk. They need to manage the customer. No, I think the customer centricity needs to come from the senior management, right from the CEO, to say that, they need to have that open conversation with them, understand what's the need, and also have that there are 3 dimensions to it. One is understanding the customer journey, then understanding customer value, and then also understanding customer experience. So I think those 3 definitely adds a better strategy to any organization.
No, absolutely. I think it's just while you're talking, then it's made me think of years gone by when businesses have been more interested in getting new customers rather than keeping existing customers happy. It's really flipped, hasn't it?
I think things flip now, because they're spending so much money getting a new customer, as well as keep your old customer happy so that they're with you for longer. Even for a customer, I'll tell you, because there's no point implementing a product every 3 years, because so much of time, money, resources spent, as well as if they're happy with the kind of, with the supplier, they would stay. In fact, there was a recent study for Forbes where they said 84% of customers would like to stay back with their old supplier if they get a good service.
Yeah, get a good deal. Yeah.
They're happy to stay back. Yeah.
Well, it's easy. It's often easy, isn't it? When you think about
it is easy.
As an individual, like home insurance, car insurance, it's
it is,
isn't it? It's a hassle to move somewhere else and shop around, but you know that if you don't, you are going to pay more than you probably need to. So
exactly,
it's nice that organisations are taking this kind of approach now.
It's important as well, isn't it, to make sure that you're selecting a supplier then, I guess, if you are implementing new systems, that you're selecting a supplier that also has those same values as you.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the human touch always matters, isn't it? We always go back to the supplier who treated you better, who had that kind of a human experience, that kind of a human touch, rather than just you have a call center answering your call or it going to a voicemail, rather than a person talking to you, a friendly person on the other and trying to resolve your problem. So
it's worth spending a little bit more sometimes, isn't it, for that better experience?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Get through to somebody rather than being stuck on hold for 20 minutes each time you need somebody.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And I was thinking more around the apprenticeship management software that we're putting in. Actually, our supplier choice was predominantly, well, not predominantly, but was their value system was also taken into account, because that then definitely comes through. Yeah.
You would see that in every phase of it, isn't it? Not just before you sign the contract, they're very nice and things, but even once after you sign the contract, you want the same kind of experience throughout. So yes.
Yeah. Well, it's always a good sign, isn't it? If you've got, if you've got a good relationship before you've actually made, before they made the sale, it's a good thing. If you haven't, it's a really, no-go sort of situation, isn't it?
All been in that situation, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a challenge as well, isn't it, sometimes? Because I think when I think about the project that we're implementing at the moment, it's got a really sort of complex landscape, because the customers are all very different. We have internal mentors, external mentors, we have Ofsted, we have ESFA, we have a lot of different customers in the mix, and they have very different perspectives and very different needs. So being able to determine what's going to be the best and how can we roll this out successfully, taking into account all of their different needs, has been probably the hardest part. It's harder than sort of defining some of the requirements sometimes. It's that the management and the positioning, which I think you were talking about before, around, if you position it correctly and you keep engaged and people know what's coming, then that can be have a very different feel to it for people involved.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. The prioritizing those requirements just to see what can be achieved now and what can be planned for the next future, phases where we can include them. And also having that communication to the customer to say that we have not forgotten about you. We have it on our roadmap and, we'll definitely get there. I think that's very key.
Yeah. And a bit of resilience in the mix as well, because you can't please all of the people all of the time, can you?
No, yeah.
Especially when you're buying an off-the-shelf, commercial off-the-shelf product, because, you're only, if you get at best, you're probably going to get an 80% fit, aren't you? I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? So that means somebody probably is going to be a bit put out because it doesn't do exactly what they want it to do. But that's the reality when you buy off the shelf, isn't it? It's not tailored to you, is it?
You can't customize much. No, true, definitely. And now that's the kind of trend where we're going, because it's so difficult to have in-house team to develop something. So we always go buy a SaaS product. But then, before you buy, it's kind of agreeing with the supplier to say where he wants to put us and understanding the roadmap, because you always get the product thinking, okay, it works for now, but what about for the future? Things will change, the requirements will change, or your user journey might change. So having that kind of initial thought before, just to make sure that, this product's got room for improvement, or it's got some room to kind of include our requirements for future, so that, we are sticking with them for longer term rather than just a short. I think even for the supplier, once they've got a big customer, so that's where they need to work. Once you finish off the product implementation, but you need to start thinking about the roadmap, how best you can enhance your product to meet to the customer's needs.
Yeah,
I think that's where a lot of gaps are.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's buying off the shelf can be a bit tricky. But I don't know, how do you think? So, okay, just going back to your point, how do you manage those needs from different users? Can you give us an example of something that's been maybe a bit challenging, or has it been mostly plain sailing?
So maybe some good examples. I think like some of our biggest challenges are that we have some internal mentors, some external mentors, but they're all at different stages with our apprentices as well. So actually being able to manage it's those sort of different overlays of, okay, there's a migration overlay, so getting people onto the system, but then there's actually this person is this far through their apprenticeship, this person is this far through their apprenticeship. So they have different needs, and we've had to try and sort of not just introduce a new system, but also then get them aligned to the new content that we want to be using as well. So it's sort of like it's making sure that those overlays meet at exactly the right point. And I wouldn't say that we've always got it right, because you can't. There's throw in the mix sort of like annual leave and changes. It's impossible to always get it right, I think, isn't it? And I think some of those challenges have been actually about taking a step back and saying, okay, what's the best we can do in this situation?
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? It quickly gets complex, doesn't it? Because we've got a fair sized number of apprentices, but it's behind so many mentors. But I suppose we all, as mentors, we each do things differently as well within that, don't we? So then, it's quickly becomes complex when you add those different tiers onto different things.
Yeah.
So,
I think. Okay, that's where maybe the usability might come helpful, because you can understand how each users are using the system and where the gaps are.
Yeah, there's so much to add in, isn't there? There's sort of like,
because each user will interact with the system in a different way, because some might use one module, some might use, but just understanding the flow and how they kind of interact with the tool. Sometimes,
Yeah, and to overcome that, on this project, we used internal mentors, of which Lisa was one, to test it and to give we've done our first iteration, let us know how it feels and what that looks like. And then we did a pilot with just one apprentice to see how that would feel. And then, so we're rolling out sort of iteratively, so that we're sort of trying to manage those expectations and also those usability issues along the way. So we're improving it every time. Being quite open, I think that that it is an iterative delivery, and we're doing the best we can, and we're learning as we go. Yeah,
true.
It's the best kind, though, isn't it? Because then you'll end up with a product that you want. If you can keep making it better, just bit by bit, it's going to get there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going well so far. I mean, just thinking about the my experience of sort of moving my first apprentice onto it, and actually before I did that, I didn't realise that I was quite not stressed about it. But when I put that first apprentice onto the system, and I thought, I've done it right. I think I've done everything. I'd used my notes and everything that you gave me, and actually it was a bit of a relief once I'd done that, and I didn't realise how. Not stress, but how much it was on my mind. It was a big relief once I'd done that first, put that first part of the process on there. And I think that's probably why we get a lot of resistance to change, isn't it? It's the fear of the unknown. We've not used something before, or got a rough idea how it works, but until you've actually done it and got that first-hand experience, it can be a little bit scary, can't it?
Oh, definitely.
Have you ever come across any kind of resistance to change, Sushma? How do you tend to
all the time, please. I mean, I think no matter what system you're implementing, I think people forget there's a human side to it. For example, you're such a great IT literate and you kind of get stressed to kind of use a new system. Imagine people have not used. And that's always that resistance from people, isn't it? Especially when it comes to technology, they're like, oh, it's something a change. So kind of engaging with them right from throughout and explaining them, this is coming, and providing that kind of adequate training. I think most of the time what we tend to do is give them a user guide or a user manual and say, go ahead and do it. But that kind of stresses them. So I think it's a good idea to stay and make sure that they understand step by step. And especially what I've seen in the present world is people have so many accessibility issues as well. So we also need to focus one element to that as well, to understand how they interact with the system, what kind of barriers might be there, not just using the system. It may be their disability, which is kind of preventing people from accessing the system. So how we can support them. So yeah, I think the training is key, and engaging with them and giving them kind of extra support. So any new system implementation, we always think about the technology element, but I think more than technology, it's human element as well. You might have a brilliant system. If people don't start to use them, then there's no good.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Yeah, I'm thinking about as being in sort of in IT for so many years.
Yes.
I'm probably guilty of that, because you do tend to think about this sort of mechanics of rolling something out, putting seed data in the system, or, it almost becomes a project plan. And you're right, you do sometimes focus, and I'm absolutely guilty, but I'm sure most people are, of just thinking about it in a sort of task-based way. But actually, you're right, if you don't engage the human side of things, if you don't get people feeling comfortable, it's not going to work as well, is it?
No. I think that's where I think the usability sometimes understand. Maybe we've designed a brilliant system, but if something is stopping them from using the product, then it's not good. So understanding what is it stopping them and trying to fix that, I think that sometimes it's a really good idea. And we all have done that, to be honest, because you're so busy. Any technical project is not simple because of the technical challenges, but you're so busy resolving that, then we forget the end user who's going to use that.
Yeah, that's it. And they're also the ones who are left with it, aren't they? Whatever you give them.
Yeah.
It's interesting as BAs, sort of, I was just thinking there, actually, it's a really good point around how those different people are going to engage with the system. What might their barriers be? I was thinking, a sort of as a tool like CATWOE might be a good thing to identify somebody's worldview, their perspective on the change, and being able to understand, what might present for them, what might prevent them from
using that. Yeah,
true.
It's a really holistic approach. Yeah, I like that.
Oh, definitely.
The first thing that comes to mind, not necessarily customer-centric, but any change to me is in terms of models, is the other Sarah curve. Do you remember the Sarah curve? Where you've got sort of like an axis of, you've got state of mind, I think, sort of the y-axis, and time across the bottom, and you've got shock, anger, rejection, acceptance and hope. And it just shows that sort of typical cycle of how people feel when a new change is introduced, which I think, it's sort of something to bear in mind, isn't it? How about you, Sushma? Have you got any strategies or standards, sort of models that you use when you're doing this kind of thing?
Especially, I think the change management element for that is anything, that's the change curve is a very natural human psychology, what people kind of go through. So I think that's where when the people kind of get that shock or that kind of rejection to say, I'm not taking this change, I think it's a good idea to get the senior management involved. So they send out the comms or they communicate to the end users to say, we're bringing this change. So that rather than coming from a project, it's always a good idea coming from a senior management and explaining them why we're doing this change. I think the kind of, honest conversation to say, sometimes it's a strategy, sometimes it's a cost cutting, or sometimes this is the way the kind of organization is going or technology where it's heading. So having that clear picture why we're doing this change. And then you can start to identify some of the change managers or the change champions to work with you so that you can bring out that change, and also they can go back and communicate to their team to say why we're doing this. I think one thing what I've realized is any project management life cycle, you get the BA in the beginning, do the requirements, get the product, do the configuration, then they kind of, that BA work is done, it's the project management. No, I think the BA needs to be involved throughout.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's very key. I think most of the organization are now understanding or seeing the benefit of having a BA on a project rather than just the project managers, so that they can deliver better, because they would have understood the whole concept much more better rather than, just managing a project, that point of view. And most of the time, what I've seen is we get a new product, but we always try and see whether the product works to the same workflow. But maybe it's a good opportunity for us to step back and see, whether we can improve the workflows before we implement a product, because it's a good opportunity sometimes,
Well, while we're there, you may as well review different things.
Yeah. I think one example, I was working for a law enforcement organization. We had this ERP system. It was out of dated one, so we had to implement new thing. But it was funny. People were thinking, let's configure the tool to the standard what we had before. But we had shortage of people managing the tool, and because people are doing manual intervention of adding data. So there's no point of implementing new tool if people are spending time using the spreadsheet or not utilizing the tool to the 100%, So maybe a good opportunity to step back and say, we also need to review our process and revise our process so that the new tool make a maximum benefit to the end users.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, we could talk about this all day. It's such a fantastic topic. But I just I suppose time's ticking on. But Kate, have you got any sort of takeaways or any tips for people in sort of this change space?
I think just what you were talking about there, Sushma, about that message coming down from the top. I think there was something in there that just sprung to mind around authenticity and really believing in the change, and not just a message from somebody because it ticks a box. But authentic messages. It's a real, I hear what you're saying, I hear why this might be difficult to accept. So that was just something that actually triggered something in my mind to think about. And I think it's just a great reminder. This conversation's just been a great reminder about, at the heart of everything, it's people. At the heart of projects, it's people. And so going back and understanding their perspectives and spending the time, taking that extra time to take people through things, particularly on the project we're currently implementing, is actually really valuable. So I'm going to have a little think about that, I think. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. How about yourself, Sushma? Have you got any tips or techniques that you could give us as a takeaway?
But I think the strategy is very important for any organization where they're heading if they want to be, more customer focused or bringing people into this change. So you need to have right from the drop down to the lower bottom. So you want the chief executive to kind of get involved in it, be honest, having the conversation to say why we're doing, what's our strategy. I think most of the time strategy is just written on the paper and written and somewhere locked down in the locker. So rather than that, I think everybody need to understand where we're heading, what's the strategy is all about. And also understanding and bringing human element to it. End of the day, it's the people who are going to use your product. It's real people. So engaging with them throughout and explaining them the change and making them they be part of that change.
Yeah, no, that's a great reminder. No, thank you both. That's been great. Thank you for watching. And if you have any ideas for future podcasts, please let us know at babrew@assistkd.com. Thank you.